The drama critic and parliamentary sketch writer was up late, along with around 12 million viewers on a Saturday night in 1963, presenting his usual piece to camera reflecting on the week's political events on a show called That Was the Week That Was. Just as Levine's slot, appropriately called invective, got underway, an audience member honed menacingly into the sidelines of the camera. Calling Levine an absolute disgrace, he punched the presenter full in the face. Getting back on his feet, Levine, with preternatural calm, sat back on his stool and asked the stunned audience, "Could we concentrate on non-violence, you and I?" Such was the vitriol and controversy that went hand in hand with the show, known to its fans as TW3, which, in the early 1960s, began the TV satire boom, and without which, there would be no Mock the Week, The Thick of It or Have I Got News for You. You have to remember what British television was like before TW3 arrived, recalls Millicent Martin, now 88, the tropical song vocalist who opened each show. You had ITV who showed music hall numbers and things like that, and then the BBC who would show the news and educational programs about agriculture. We came from an entirely new space and people didn't know what to make of us, especially within the BBC. I remember being in the lift going up to the studio before the first show and an old executive was in it with me. Rather than saying good luck, he said, "We've always got some old films we can show instead if this new thing of yours doesn't work out." That was the week that was, which debuted on the BBC. There was only one Beeb channel at that time. 60 years ago this week was the program that MPs and Prime Ministers were terrified of, established celebrities were wary of and its fans could not get enough of. From a channel whose previous attempts at satire were, according to screenwriter Dennis Potter, as harmless as a punch from a broken-down flyweight, this new show won initial rave reviews for what was considered to be new and absolutely shocking levels of leg-pulling and merciless teasing of those in power. Hosted by David Frost, the writer's room for TW3 was a treasure chest of post-war creative talent with luminaries including John Cleese, Keith Waterhouse, Willie Rushton, John Bird, Ned Sheeran and even Sir John Betjeman contributing to the sketches and monologues that lampooned everything from American segregationists to the Church of England to nuclear weapons. The show looked entirely different too, with the creators keen to give a British feel to the program. For the first time on a live TV show, the bare lights, roving cameras and studio walls were all constantly in shot for the audience to see what was happening in the BBC's Lime Grove studios. Then occupying number 10, Harold Macmillan was, surprisingly, broadly supportive of the program. As he and members of his cabinet were mocked live on air, the PM himself is said to have written that, "It is a good thing to be laughed over. It is better than to be ignored." As for Millicent, now living in California and still working as an actor, most recently in the Netflix show Grace and Frankie, her memories of the show are of a program infused with the white heat of creativity and no small amount of chaos. "We were really riding on the seat of our pants a lot of the time. I only got the scripts to the tropical songs on the morning of the show. I remember just having to play them absolutely straight as there was no time for me to add anything. The satire songs were always beautifully written but there was no way I could use an auto cue. They were so slow back then that it never could have kept up with how fast I had to sing." Martin, one of the last surviving cast members of TW3, has lived in Los Angeles for the past 45 years with her husband Mark but still has clear memories of her time on a show that burned brightly for its first season run in 1962 but, according to the critics, had faded by the time the second series began in the autumn of 1963. Complaints by viewers about the increasingly scabrous content grew, and upper management at the BBC were becoming increasingly wary of the show's content. Director General Hugh Green began to demand cuts to some of the riskier jokes. The resignation of Macmillan to be replaced by Alec Douglas-Home and an imminent general election in the spring of 1964 gave the BBC bosses the excuse they needed to cancel TW3. "I think the BBC got asked to take it off and they complied," recalls Millicent. "I don't remember being angry when it was cancelled. I was just really sad." Reduced from an hour to 50 minutes running time for the second series, a radical reworking of one episode was required to report on the assassination of JFK. The usual satire was replaced by a serious 20-minute tribute to the late president which, although dutifully somber, was regarded by journalist Paul Foot as being sickeningly sycophantic. TW3 wouldn't go entirely gently into the good night. At the end of the final episode on December 28, 1963, Willie Rushton appeared on screen, ostensibly to turn out the studio lights before uttering, "That was the week that was, it's over, let it go." The DG, Director General Hugh Green, is a fleabag. He couldn't run a bus. Millicent Martin believes that, regardless of the era, the Prime Minister or the issues of the day, there's always room for taking authority figures down a peg or two. "I'd like to think that a show that was as shocking to people as we were would be allowed to air today. But people have lost their sense of humor in so many ways these days. So I have to admit I'm a bit skeptical."